Welcome to this lecture. Now let's see how we can just change the MAC addresses. So first of all, what you need to do is again open that PyCharm that we did in the previous lecture. So you could see we just see how we can get the current MAC address of this machine from this code. But now what we need to do is change the MAC address. So before that, you could see this code looks like basically in the singular line, and basically this doesn't define the perfect code because it is not inside a shortened block. That means this look a bunch of very dirty coding. So first of all, we will make the function that is going to do this for us. So I'll just make this current MAC function, and this function is going to just return us these MAC addresses. So let me just copy again everything and let me just paste it down here in this current MAC, and instead of just printing over here, you can also print. Okay, we'll just print here. So this is basically our current MAC that we did in the previous lecture, but for now we have to now see how we can change the MAC addresses, and this is very important. So first of all, let me just go back to the documentation, and I have already shown you before that if you want to execute any command on this terminal or a shell, you have to use this shop process module. So we have already seen the action, that is check output method, already seen that how this executes the command and return the output, which was our MAC address. Now we are going to use another method, and this is very important method, which is this call method. So let's see what this tells us about. So first of all, it is saying it will run the command, okay, described by the arguments. Okay, we are just passing the arguments, and it will just run that command based on that argument, and it will wait for command to complete and then return the return code attribute. That means if you just see and go back what we did before, so we are just out of this terminal, so let me just go again. So if you see what we did in the previous lecture was, first of all, we just did something like ifconfig and wlan 0 down. So basically this was the command in order to get our interface down before actually changing the MAC addresses. So if you see and if you just analyze this command used to be the first command in our list of commands that was used to change the MAC addresses. So if you see here, if you just do something like before actually just writing this down statement, if you just started just actually using this MAC changer or any other maybe this command ifconfig, and if I want to just change the wlan 0 and the maybe the ether part, what I'm doing, so ether part and your MAC addresses maybe 00, if you do this before actually just making your interface down, then this is not going to work. So that means the sequence of this operation is very important in order to work with the MAC changer. So first of all, you have to always down your network card. After that, you will just change your MAC address, and after that you will just make your network interface again running. So that is the sequence of the operation that should be executed, and this call method is just saying us that. So before actually just jumping on the another argument or another command, it will wait for that command to complete, and after that is executed, if we just get the return code, that means the first command is executed, it will just go to the second command and it will just run that command. So let's see how this works and how this is basically going to give us the new MAC addresses. So first of all, I'll just define the method to do that, and I'll just say change the MAC. So I'll just give interface over here, and next thing I want to give is new MAC. So what we just did here is before that I have to just input something from the user, that is your interface and your new MAC. So I'll just say input, and I have to give the message to the user, enter your interface or a network interface. So this will be the information, they will just give the information. Let me just strip this because we don't want any blank spaces, and basically this will just give us the perfect interface option or input from the user. And I also want the new MAC addresses that is inputted by the user. So I want enter the new MAC address you want to change. Okay, this will be also in the string, because we know anything that is from this input method will be in the string. I want to strip this too. So we have now interface and new MAC. While calling this change MAC, we'll just pass this interface and new MAC in the positional argument of this interface and new MAC. So let's go over here and let's run our Linux command to change the MAC. So you know how to just run this command. Now we are not going to use this method which is check output. Now we are going to run the next command, which will be call command. So in this call command, you have to just give this list of arguments that is in the form of list. So I'll just say ifconfig, and the next part will be your interface. So let me just convert to the string, and I'll just say interface that is passed in this MAC. And after you just pass the interface, let me run the first command we are going to get. So that command will be down command. So first of all, you have to just run this down command, and that should run in the shell. That means I'll just say the shell should be true. So this will be the first command that will be executed, and you can clearly see over here. If you see the combination, this is going to give us, let me just comment this out real quick here. So this is going to give us ifconfig. Okay, what I'm writing here, ifconfig, and basically this space is to denote this space. So next will be your interface, because this is not going to give any spaces. That means we have to just assign explicitly the spaces between these commands. And the next one after that is going to the interface. So interface will be WLAN 0 if I just enter from here. And after that interface, this is also given the explicitly spaces, because we want the spaces between this WLAN 0 and down command. And after that we just enter the down. So this is the command that is from the sub process, and after this is executed, we have to just call another process again, and that is your ether process, or basically changing the main MAC addresses of this current MAC. So I'll also say ifconfig, and give the space again as usual, and add the interface, which will be typecasted to this string. I'll just say interface. And after that, you know what to do. We have done this many times before. So now I have to give space again, because I want this ether attribute or the argument to be changed to the MAC address. So I'll just say again, this should be changed to the MAC addresses that we just input. So I'll just say str, and here I'll just pass new MAC. And let me just give one space again over here. So this will be end of this statement again, and after you just pass this command, you have to say that this is shell and it should be true. So we have command here that is executed in order to change our MAC addresses, MAC address basically. So next one would be to make your basically interface up and running. So in order to do that, you know what to call, that is this up method. So instead of just writing again, let me just copy this, because the change between this statement and the statement we are writing is only the up to down, or basically down to up. So I'll just say up. So you can see we have now changed the MAC addresses, and now we have got this new MAC addresses entered from the user. We'll just send this to change MAC, and we'll see change in the MAC address. So what I'm going to do is now I have to call this change MAC, and that should be done over here. I'll just pass the interface in the place of interface. I'll just pass the new MAC in the place of new MAC. So we have done this. So let's see if this works or not. So before that, let me say current MAC. So I'll just pass the current MAC over here, and we'll just input that, and we'll just say current MAC and change this. So before current MAC, let me just say that First of all, this will be old Mac is, and let me just format this with this current Mac. Let me just close this. So now we have this old Mac address. Okay, I'm saying address. Old Mac address is formatted over here. We'll just see that current Mac, and after that we'll just change that current Mac. So before that I have to just see the way it is called. Okay, it is first current Mac is called, and after that we have called the change Mac. Okay, that is fine. So let's run this Mac changer and let's see what is so network interface I want to change is WLAN 0. So into the new Mac address you want to change. Okay, I want to change to this Mac address. Let's go with another Mac addresses to change, and let me just run this one more time. So let me just press to run again, and let me say the interface will be again WLAN 0, which is my wireless card. Enter the new Mac address. Let me say 1233, let me say 45, let me say 929322, let me see. Okay, it is 6 part, it is having the 6 part. Let me just hit enter, and let's see if this is working or not. So it is perfectly working now. Let's go, and now let's only check for the current Mac. So let's remove calling this one, and let's see if this works or not. So let's see if we have changed from this Mac addresses, which was this current old Mac, to this. So obviously we have done this, but let me just so okay, it is again asking, but it doesn't matter, we don't need that. Run this again. Now it will show you the MAC addresses, that is the new MAC addresses we just assigned from this current, or basically from this change MAC. So we just found that we just execute this command on this cell and we just change the current MAC to the MAC addresses that we just entered from here. So this is the perfect example how to change the MAC addresses. But you can see here this MAC addresses was entered from the user. What if we want the random MAC addresses? So we will just implement that random MAC addresses assignment in the next lecture, which will be also the interesting lecture. So see you in the next one.